Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I just wanted to pass on some news that I heard about. I think it was actually yesterday that a well-known athlete had passed away, someone who's been well respected for a long time. He actually was one of the first Brazilian athletes to really put a Brazilian on the world stage in terms of the sport, which is boxing. So Adilson Maguila, his name is actually Adilson Rodrigues, but they called him Magilla, which I'm going to get into. Brazilian champion boxer dies at the age of 66. Discover the racist origin of his nickname, Magilla. And I gotta actually talk a little bit about that because even though I knew who he was, it never occurred to me why they called him Magilla. So I have to talk about that. When I discovered that he had passed away, I was already considering doing a story about him as it was, but then I heard this little this little detail that I had never heard about. I'm like, yeah, I definitely have to talk about it now. So before I get into this video, definitely like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell, and let's just get into it for today. Let's talk about this important athlete in Brazilian history. Okay, so Adilson Maguila Rodrigues. Okay, he was a former boxer, multi-champion, a reference in South American sport. He struggled with a degenerative brain disease and health complications. Okay, this is a picture from when he was still boxing. Adilson Rodrigues was a champion fighter. He had a pretty good record as a fighter as well. When I looked at the number of victories, by knockout, against the losses, I mean, this guy deserves to go down in history as, one of Brazil's greatest athletes. Boxing has picked up popularity in Brazil, I'd say over the last few decades, definitely. It's always been there, but I had never really, I remember some years ago, I remember a guy, why am I not thinking of that guy's name right now? I have to think about that another time. What was his name? Papo? God, I can't remember his name right now. I'm going to just put up a picture of him because right now I can't remember what that guy's name is. He was like the first Brazilian boxer that I became aware of, and that was like 20 years ago, maybe. Later on, I would become familiar with Maguila. And as I said, just knowing who he was, I never considered, I just thought it was a name. I didn't think anything about the origins of the name. So I'm going to get a little bit into that. As I'm talking about boxing, I think any red-blooded male, there's going to be a time when you've been into boxing, when you were interested in the sport, even if you didn't plan on getting in the ring yourself. I always say when I speak about my first heroes, athletic heroes, I will always speak about Julius Erving, who's known as Dr. J, and I always talk about Muhammad Ali, who became a figure outside of the ring. He was associated with his opinions on race. In terms of just world stature, Ali is always going to be, one of the top people in terms of athletics. I've often talked about how I came to know who Pelé was, when I was a kid. And it was really a big deal when I think it was Sports Illustrated had named Pelé the top athlete of the 20th century. And Ali was actually number two, which tells you how big Pelé was. Now, growing up in the United States, I wasn't really into soccer. I was into basketball, baseball, and football. And I watched boxing. I never participated in it. But my introduction to boxing was, I say it was Ali. My father was big into boxing. So I grew up watching all the champions, all the greats. I watched I knew of Ali. I watched some of Ali's fights, even if it was later on, I wasn't born when Ali first started fighting, but later on as a child, I would watch some of his films. I remember watching some of the biopics about Ali. So then, I remember some of the heroes I grew up watching, Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, just a lot of those people from that era. I don't I've said this before. I don't watch sports as much as I used to, but I can always just remember when there was a time when I really was into boxing. I was into all of those sports. Well, the top three sports in the U.S. I would only start really learning a little bit about soccer because of my interest in Brazil. You can't really get into Brazil without knowing a little bit about soccer because it's such a huge sport in Brazil. So that was my introduction to boxing. Those are just some of the names. I just remember, in the 80s, it was a classic period for welter and middleweight fighters. And those classic four, Roberto Duran, Thomas Hearn, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Marvin Hagler, everybody remembers they had some classic fights. The heavyweight division, everybody remembers the Mike Tyson era, Evander Holyfield. These are some of the people that I used to watch, when I was still into sports. And again, I started because of Brazil, I would learn about some of Brazil's top athletes, obviously in the soccer world. Other sports are picking up in Brazil as well. As I said, I'm familiar with some of the boxers there. There've been a number of basketball players who've actually left Brazil to go play in the NBA. So sports has always been a big thing in Brazil. It's just that I think that the popularity of sports outside of soccer is starting to grow a little bit more. Usually Brazil was it was a soccer country. It still is. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is that what I appreciate about learning more about Adilson Rodrigues is that he was actually, it was in discussions, the possibility of producing a biopic about him. Well-known actor was going to portray him. That film never got off the ground, but I'm hoping, with his passing now, maybe they'll consider investing in doing a film about him, because for years, as I said, when I first started going to Brazil, you didn't have much Black representation on TV or in films. Black people were always in secondary roles, comic relief or something, kind of like people that are not really important to the script. But in recent years, we've seen, this starting to change, even if just a little bit. We know that there's been a Paramount series focusing on mixed martial artist Anderson Silva, known as Spider. Okay. I don't know how many of you have watched that series. I have not had a chance to watch it. There was a film, a TV series, and a musical about Brazil's top singer, who they call Brazil's father of Brazilian soul music, Tim Maia. Intriguing. The same actor who played Tim Maia, he was supposed to be the actor who was going to portray Adilson Rodrigues, the guy that they call Magilla. He was all set to portray him in a biopic. Like I said, the film was never released. I don't know if they actually filmed it and it just was never released, or it just never got off the ground. But I know either way, that film never materialized. But this same guy was supposed to have been chosen to play Magilla in the film. As you can see, they made him look somewhat like Tim Maia. Okay. Then a couple of years ago, or was it last year, there was a film about popular comedian Mussum. This film won a lot of awards at the Brazil's film festival, the biggest film festival in the country. And this particular film cleaned up. So Brazil is only recently starting to recognize that there are some important Afro-Brazilian figures that they could be talking about in TV series and in films. So I'm hoping that actually this comes out one of these days. I hope this film materializes. I only became aware of Adilson Rodrigues maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember how I came familiar with him, but after I learned about him, I started, looking into some of his fights. You can find a few of his fights online. Boxers, they're another breed of people. You do have to truly be a warrior to want to get into a ring and, go to toe to toe with another man in a fight that, you could lose your life in. Got mad props for, fighters. The first time I became aware of Adilson Rodrigues, I watched the fight with George Foreman. I think it was from 1990. There were two major fights that he had with two heavyweight, Black American fighters. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but that's the first time that I became aware of Adilson Rodrigues. Like I said, I had no idea. I never thought about why he was called Magilla. I will talk about this over the course of this article. So today's material comes from Giovanni Ramos, Pedro Benjamin Prado, and the BOL Newsroom. A lot of good information. I mean, since his passing, I've done a lot more research. I'm going to try to keep this video short, but it's intriguing, some of the stuff that I learned about him. So Adilson Maguila, one of the greatest names in the history of Brazilian boxing. He died on Thursday afternoon at the age of 66. The former boxer faced a long battle with the chronic traumatic, what is it, encephalopathy, what, CTE, encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by the countless blows he received during his career in the ring. Of course, that brings to mind Muhammad Ali. We all know what happened with Ali. You know, he should have retired years before that he actually retired. And some of those blows he took to the head ended up, Ali had Parkinson's disease for a number of years. And a lot of, the degenerative state that he was in, they say it had to do with how many blows that he took to the head. And apparently this was one of the same things that took out Adilson Rodrigues. Fighters go on too long. I mean, just imagine. I mean, these guys lifting 300-400 pounds, and then you getting hit in the head numerous times in a fight. Even if you're not somebody who dies from it, you have to wonder what is the traumatic effect on somebody's head after taking that many hits. And this guy had, like, I don't know, I thought it was 70 or 80 professional fights with men who were as big as him or bigger. Football is also a brutal sport when you really find out about what goes on that field. So anyway, like I said, mad respect for anybody who's got the nerve or the daring to get into a ring and fight when you know you could lose your life, in this sport. Magilla was admitted to a nursing home in recent months, and confirmation of his death was made by his wife, Irani Pideiro, in an interview on Record TV. He was hospitalized for 28 days, and we tried not to talk to the press because I tried to take care of my family. Magilla had been suffering from chronic traumatic encephalopathy for 18 years. Wow, 18 years he suffered with this. 30 days ago, a lump was discovered in his lung. He felt a lot of pain in the abdomen. They took 2 liters of water from his lungs. We were unable to do the biopsy, Irani reported. Born in Aracaju, on July 11th of 1958, Magilla had a prominent career in boxing. In his 17 years as a fighter, he participated in 85 fights, winning 77, with 61 of those victories coming by knockout, in addition to 7 losses and a technical draw. Known for his charisma, he won over audiences with his laid-back personality, especially in interviews. Among the most notable opponents of his career are sports legends such as Evander Holyfield and George Foreman. And I just want to point out here, it said he was born in Aracaju. That is the capital city of the state of Sergipe in Brazil's northeast. Just for those of you who are not familiar with, the states in Brazil. Magilla this is the fight he had with George Foreman in 1990. Magilla became interested in boxing while he was still in his hometown, inspired by the fights of Eder Joffre, another, popular Brazilian boxer, and Muhammad Ali. At the age of 23, he began his training and in 1981 made his debut in professional boxing. 2 years later, in 1983, he won his first Brazilian title by beating Waldemar Paulino at the Ibirapuera Gymnasium in Sao Paulo, remaining champion until 1995. Wow, that's a long time. He remained champion from 1983 to 1985. The following year, in 1984, Magilla became South American champion by knocking out the Argentine Juan Antonio Figueroa, holding the title for a decade. Again, that's really impressive. I think it's noteworthy. It's I think there's a biography about Magilla, and like I said, they were in the process of creating a biopic for him. So, brutal knockout, Evander Holyfield versus Adilson Rodrigues. Both of the fights he had, the one with Holyfield and the one with George Foreman, I mean, they put him down, they dusted him. He was out for several seconds in both of those knockouts, right? But, it doesn't, okay, so he was not able to take out Holyfield or George Foreman, but, he still should be recognized as one of Brazil's greatest champions in the sport of boxing. And South America as a whole. Despite losing his invincibility in 1985, Magilla had a victorious rematch against Argentine Daniel Falcone in 1986, ending the rival's career. The Brazilian also won the Belt of the Americas for the World Boxing Council, the WBC, in 1986, and the Latin American titles by the World Boxing Association, WBA, and International Boxing Federation in 1996. So again, guy had an impressive boxing career. So just to take a look at this, one of the disappointments Magilla felt in his career was that he was never able to have a fight with Mike Tyson. He says by the time They were in talks to get a fight with Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was, you remember, I think it was at 90, 91, somewhere in there that Tyson actually went to prison. Now, you can never say what was going to come out with a fight or the result of a fight, but I'm saying anybody knows Mike Tyson, his prison time kind of derailed his career for a few years. But we all know, for like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, how many years there was when Mike Tyson first came out, Mike Tyson was a beast. I mean, some of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen were courtesy of Mike Tyson's gloves, right? So I can't tell you what would have happened in that fight, but I think I know he got took out. Magilla got took out by Foreman. He got taken out by Holyfield. I think probably Mike Tyson probably would have took him down as well. I mean, that's just my opinion based on the fights that I have seen of Mike Tyson and Magilla, as well as the fights that he had, like I said, with Foreman and Evander Holyfield. But that's just my opinion. You never know. But I'm just saying, vintage Mike Tyson, I don't think it would have ended well for him. But, you can always aspire. Magilla retired in 2000 after being knocked out by Daniel Frank in his last fight held on February 29th of that year. So he fought until age 42. In 2015, a film about Magilla's life was announced with actor Babu Santana cast to play him. However, the recordings were suspended due to lack of sponsorship. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. This is the other thing that I said. I just became aware of this. As I said, I knew his name, but I honestly didn't know. I just discovered this yesterday that the nickname that he has, Magilla, actually he was named after the gorilla in the popular Hanna and Barbera cartoon series. The nickname Magilla came before his boxing fame while working as a security guard at nightclubs in Sao Paulo. He was initially nicknamed Godzilla, a comparison to the Japanese monster due to his imposing presence. Over time, regulars started calling him Magilla, in a racist reference to the character in the Hanna and Barbera Magilla gorilla cartoon, which was translated as Magilla o Gorilla for the Brazilian television audience. Now, I want to point that out because when I found that out, I said I definitely have to cover this because, again, what I talk about in these videos on the channel as well as on the blog is, looking at Brazil from the perspective of race. So the question is, whoever gave him this nickname and the nickname stuck, why would they choose to call him a gorilla? Well, I think we know why. In Brazil's history, calling someone a monkey or ape or a gorilla is something that's just embedded in Brazil's culture. You go to Black Brazil today and just punch in the word monkey or macaco, macaca being the feminine version, and you're going to find all of these articles of Black Brazilians being called a monkey. I mean, just look at them. All of these articles here. I don't know how many articles I have, but it's just, you want to insult a Black Brazilian in Brazil, that's the first word that's going to come out of somebody's mouth. Some idea about calling a Black person a monkey, throwing bananas at them, making references to monkeys, making monkey gestures. It's part of the culture. Anybody who's lived in Brazil or a Brazilian can tell you this. It comes up time and time again. How many people have been called a monkey, as a Brazilian citizen, So when I discovered that, I knew I had to talk about this because, number one, all of us spent time watching some of the popular cartoons by Hanna and Barbera. But as I've said over and over again, the United States has a huge percentage of the Brazilian market in terms of television and especially film. So all of the cartoons that we grew up watching from Hanna and Barbera, they were all broadcast in Brazil with Portuguese overdubs. So they would overdub the characters, with Portuguese, voice actors. Magilla Gorilla was not a cartoon that I watched. So I knew of the cartoon, but there were numerous cartoons by Hanna and Barbera. This was just one of the cartoons that I never happened to watch. So it never occurred to me that his name came from this gorilla in a Hanna Barbera cartoon. You have to ask. I'm like, it's always a question of why is it that people feel the need to dehumanize Black people? I was asking this, why? Well, where does this come from? Now, I would have said that if he had a problem with this nickname, he should have nipped it in the bud years ago. But let me just continue with the story because it kind of explains how this nickname, continued and he became known by this name. I don't know if people outside of Brazil knew that this is where he got the name from. I know I didn't know that. As I've known about him for a few years now, I didn't know that the Magilla nickname came from Magilla Gorilla. I just learned that. So Maguila Ugorilla, or Magilla Gorilla, is an animated series produced by Hanna and Barbera Studios and aired on several channels between 1964 and 1967. In Brazil, the cartoon was very successful and was shown on several channels such as TV Tupi, Record, Bandeirantes, and SBT. So kids grew up watching Magilla Gorilla, which is where the famous boxer got his nickname. At first, the nickname with racist connotations bothered both Adilson and his trainer, Ralph Zumbano, who criticized the nickname's reference to a monkey. The name, however, eventually consolidated and projected him and made him famous worldwide. When Magilla participated in the Forge of Champions tournament, which marked the beginning of his professional career, in 1981, the nickname was already widely known. During his first fight in the tournament, the Master of Ceremonies introduced him as Magilla, consolidating the nickname once and for all despite the initial discomfort. Over time, the name Magilla pushed the boundaries of boxing and became part of Brazilian popular culture. The fighter, who faced big names like Evander Holyfield and George Foreman, had a childhood marked by poverty and difficulties, such as living in abandoned trucks and surviving by eating bread and bananas. Throughout his career, Magilla reframed the nickname, turning it into a symbol of his strength. So again, this was a story that came out, I think, in 2020, just talking about the actor Babu Santana, popular actor, award-winning actor. He was chosen to portray Magilla in a biopic. In a post on Instagram, popular actor Babu Santana highlighted the importance of the former athlete, recalling his career and contribution to the sport. Magilla is representation, strength, struggle, resilience, and resistance, said the actor, who had been cast to play the boxer in a biopic that was never released. Babu revealed that he was deeply shaken by Magilla's departure, mentioning a special moment they shared. I remember the day you found out I was going to play you, and you said, "I'm glad it's him because he's just as handsome as me," the actor recalled. The biopic, entitled Welcome Magilla, was due to be released in 2023, but the project never came to fruition. So anyway, just a short video today. I just wanted to, give respect and just, share with my audience who this boxer was. He popularized the sport in Brazil. He was Brazil's really first big heavyweight champion. He was a South American champion. He made it into fighting in the United States against two well-known fighters in the U.S. that all of us are familiar with. But I also had to highlight, again, this idea that Brazilians always want to associate Black people with monkeys, apes, and gorillas. It's unfortunate. Again, why Brazil? You're not supposed to be racist, but I keep coming up with more and more stories that says, well, it's actually the very opposite of that. So anyway, that's what I have for today. What did you think of this video? Drop a comment in the comment section. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on that notification bell so you know when I put up another video. And with that said, going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.